Hello defenders, this is day 986 of Russia's catastrophic invasion of Ukraine. The Russian terrorists planned an attack on the US and Canada. Kremlin deals with the shortages by purchasing Ukrainian butter. The so-called Russian peace proposal of 2022 revealed. Russia's new generation jet fighter showcased in China, and former initiators of the war in Ukraine back up from the war. You're watching Only Facts with Operator Starsky, and we will talk about the most important updates right now. Tonight, Russians were bombing Kharkiv using gliding bombs. Several explosions reported in Shevchenkivsky and Kievsky districts of the city. Luckily, the bombs exploded in the deserted area and nobody died. Another Shahed attack was deflected overnight. Witnesses shared a footage of a kamikaze drone falling down over Kyiv. Such drones are still dangerous though, because they can detonate on impact, which happens in most cases. The Russian invaders had no significant success over the past 24 hours in Donbass. Also, the most recent footage of the Russian assault that was traced back to the Kursk Oblast indicated that the terrorists still unable to deal with the Ukrainian troops on their territory. By the way, tomorrow will mark 3 months since the Ukrainian forces incurred the Russian land, capturing hundreds of Russian prisoners of war. The Ukrainian naval drones patrolling the Black Sea keep the remains of the Russian fleet docked. Just to remind you, since the failed Russian blitzkrieg in 2022, invaders lost 1/3 of their Black Sea fleet, including the flagship Moskva, to a country that barely had anything bigger than a patrol boat. Also, the worsening weather conditions won't benefit the Russian reconnaissance aircraft and drones, especially over the Black Sea, and it's a good news because we all know how much Russians enjoy striking grain facilities and sunflower oil terminals. The Russian terrorists in Poland prepared incendiary devices they intended to send to the US and Canada on board of the cargo airplanes. According to the Western intelligence, incendiary devices were found and 4 terrorists were busted in Poland during the ongoing investigation on the Russian attacks on the military facilities across Europe. The terrorists were accused of participating in sabotage or terrorist act in favor of the foreign intelligence, which raises a question: why do ISIS and Hamas receive more coverage in the Western media than the Orthodox Russian Al-Qaeda? Please let me know. A so-called Russian peace proposal of 2022 was presented in details by the Radio Liberty and Radio Free Europe. Now, there's a bunch of naive people you can find anywhere in the social media that are convinced that the peace between Ukraine and Russia could be achieved 2 years ago, but the evil West allegedly talked Ukraine out of it. So here's the Russian proposal to Ukraine in 2022. Fictitious neutral status of Ukraine, decimating the armed forces to 50,000 soldiers, no protection from NATO, no chance to return Crimea and Donbass because Russia demanded Ukraine to recognize them as Russian territories within administrative borders, basically give up additional territories that were not controlled by the Russian invaders. Russia also demanded Ukraine to lift all the sanctions and revoke all the international charges pressed against the Russian terrorists since 2014. Russia demanded Ukraine to recognize Russian language, a state language in Ukraine, legalize all the totalitarian symbols of the Soviet Union, and establish the power of the Russian Church. Also, Russia demanded Ukraine to finance the restoration of Donbass that was basically destroyed as a result of the Russian hybrid warfare, and restore the water supply to the Crimean Peninsula, illegally annexed by the Russians in 2014. According to this so-called peace proposal, in return, Russia promised not to kill Ukrainians. Now, let me know in the comments if you would sign this agreement with the Russian terrorists. And because the Russian invasion fails so dramatically, even the initiators of the war in Ukraine officially back up. We're not talking about the terrorist Igor Girkin, of course. He's in the Russian jail because he knows too much. We're talking about the member of the Russian parliament, Alexander Borodai. Russian terrorist, one of those who started the war in Donbass in 2014. In his recent speech, Borodai criticized the Russian command because Russian invaders lack shells and personnel, specifically infantry. I think it's because majority of the healthy Russian men are being sent into a meat grinder. Check yourself.
СВО, которое было задумано как блестящая короткая операция, план у нас не сработал. И, как всегда, возник план «Б». И война превратилась в долгую, длинную, кровавую рутину с на сегодняшний день, извините, неочевидными результатами, несмотря на все, что нам, так сказать, вещают. Тем более, что все сложности, какие у нас были, они, извините, никуда не ушли. У нас по-прежнему не хватает пехоты, людей вообще не хватает, но пехоты в особенности. И, кстати сказать, о деятельности нашего военно-промышленного комплекса у нас не хватает снарядов. Прошло почти 3 года войны, настоящей войны, и по-прежнему наш военно-промышленный комплекс, или я уж не знаю, куда он там снаряды, где он там снаряды хранит, где он их засаливает, но их по-прежнему нету. Я вам могу сказать в цифрах, но, честно говоря, не хочу, потому что зачем пугать почтенное собрание.
Dear viewers, a lot of you might think, how come Russians suck so badly when it comes to military planning if they were always presented as a superpower in the Western media, with their hypersonic missiles, nuclear weapons, and top-notch aviation? Okay, let's talk about the aviation. Yesterday, Russian latest generation jet fighter Su-57 arrived to China, where everybody could see, touch, and photograph this advanced Orthodox Russian airplane designed using the alien technologies and baptized with the magical morning dew collected by the Russian virgins from Putin's balls. Upon the closer look, it turned out that the latest Russian jet fighter was apparently built using a sickle and a hammer. See yourself. You know, it reminds me of the Russian saying «srali mazali». It's when you want to describe something built by the workers who gave absolutely no damn about it. Currently, Russia has about 30 Su-57s in their possession, minus those that were hit by the good Ukrainian drones earlier this year. Don't get me wrong, Russia is an extremely powerful country because instead of investing into people's well-being, they build such amazing machines. Of course, nobody cares about covering basic people's needs in Russia, for example, firewood or butter, and I believe in some of my previous reports we talked about the shortage of those mentioned above. However, the genius Russian government found a solution and is currently buying butter for its citizens in the United Arab Emirates. Small nuance, it's a Ukrainian butter produced and exported by Ukraine. Why are we talking about butter on my channel, you may ask? You see, my friends, it's a very important thing to understand that even despite the war, Ukraine is still able to export provision and a lot of other goods, including military goods. And at the same time, Russian superpower is desperately choking in shortages. It's running around its closest allies such as China or North Korea, buying shells and electric components to continue its stupid war. Russia is even buying provision through the third parties from Ukraine, and if you want to know who wins the war of attrition, it's not necessarily those who have more weapons, it's those who have food. And of course, all the income from the Ukrainian butter will be invested into production of good Ukrainian drones. With that, my friends, I wish you all a beautiful day. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm Operator Starsky. As always, be safe.